Ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween, and welcome to a very special episode of Haunted America. On today's episode, we have two chilling horror stories to read for you. The Dog with the Human Head and The Baby Monitor. Both these stories coming up on today's episode of
Haunted America.
If you would like to call in and have your own chilling story played out loud on the podcast, give us a call at 716-389-4662. 716-389-4662. Or shoot us an email at hauntedamericapodcast@gmail.com. The Dog with the Human Head. I'm not the kind of person who believes in the paranormal. Sure, I've felt strange things, seen shadows where they shouldn't be, but I've always attributed it to fatigue or stress. But what happened to me a week ago, that can't be explained. I'm sure you're going to think I'm crazy, but I need to tell you. Maybe if I say it out loud, it'll start to make sense. That night I was coming home late from college, around 11. I don't like getting off the stop near Mrs. Laura's house. It's not the safest, and sometimes it's very lonely. But I was exhausted, plus, it only had been a week since her husband, Mr. Alejandro, had died. Everyone in the neighborhood was still in shock, and even though we weren't close, something in me felt sorry for Miss Laura. Maybe that's why I got off at the stop. As if just passing by connected me to the grief.
The street was strangely empty. Not a single light was on in nearby houses, nor the usual sound of dogs barking or cars passing by. The only light came from a street lamp that flickered right in front of Mrs. Laura's house. The light, flickering erratically, already gave the place a spooky air. As I turned the corner and approached the house, I sensed something strange in the air. I don't know if it was the silence or the fact that it was unusually cold for that time of year, but something wasn't right, and that's when I saw it.
There was a dog standing on the sidewalk, right in front of Miss Laura's house. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. It was large, with dark fur, and it was completely still, as if it were just waiting for me. My first thought was that maybe it was a new pet she had adopted to fill the void left by her husband's death. But as I got a little closer, I noticed something that made me stop dead in my tracks. That dog had the head of a man.
At first, I thought I was seeing wrong. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe it was tiredness playing with my mind. But no, the head on it was Don Alejandro's. The same head, the same empty expression I saw in his coffin a few days before. The skin was pale, the eyes sunken, as if death itself had stolen any trace of life from it. But that head was attached to the dog's body as if it were part of it. I froze. I felt a knot in my stomach, a pressure in my chest. My heart began to beat uncontrollably, and at that moment, I felt the vertigo begin to rise through my body, making me stagger, but I couldn't move. The dog, or whatever it was staring at me. At that moment, I thought about running, but my legs wouldn't respond. Cold sweat ran down my forehead. I tried not to look directly at that human head on the dog's body, but it was impossible. It was as if horror itself forced me to confront it. And then, the worst thing happened. He barked.
The sound was high-pitched, shrill, exactly like a normal dog's bark. But hearing that bark coming from a human mouth was terrifying. His head, Don Alejandro's, didn't move like an animal's. His human lips formed that canine sound, and my whole body tensed. My knees buckled. I felt my heart racing even faster, pumping with difficulty. I knew that if I didn't do something soon, I was going to pass out right there. I don't know how, but I managed to stagger backwards. I turned on my heels and started running, not looking back. My feet hit the pavement clumsily, as if, at any movement, they would fail me. Everything around me became blurry. I could still hear the barking echoing in my ears, like distorted echoes that haunted me in the night. When I got home, I collapsed on the couch, panting. My brother was in front of the TV, playing video games, as if nothing in the world was abnormal. I told him what I had seen, hoping for some sign of understanding, but all he did was laugh. "You must be delirious," he said between laughs, without even taking his eyes off the screen.
The next few days were torment. I avoided the bus stop near Mrs. Laura's house at all costs. I walked almost a kilometer more just to avoid passing by. During the day, everything seemed normal, although deep down I knew that what I had seen that night was not a simple illusion. Every time I thought about that dog with Mr. Alejandro's head, I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew I wasn't crazy, but I couldn't tell anyone else either. Several days passed until I finally decided to pass by there again. I couldn't continue living in fear. It was absurd. That night, when I got off the bus, the air was thick, heavy, as if something in the atmosphere foreshadowed what was to come. I tried not to think about the dog, about his grotesque human head, but every step I took towards Mrs. Laura's house made the memory come back more strongly.
When I got to the corner, the same fear came over me, like a pressure in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I didn't want to look, I swear. I just wanted to get past quickly, but then I heard it. That bark. The same bark I'd heard last time. My blood ran cold. I squeezed my eyes shut and quickened my pace. I couldn't let myself look, not again. But it was no use. The barking grew louder, more insistent, and in a moment of weakness, I turned my head. There was the dog, but this time it was worse. He was standing on his hind legs, with that same human head, Don Alejandro's head, staring at me with those dead eyes, but he was even taller than I remembered. The dog was barking, but his expression was empty, cold. I felt like I was running out of air. Dizziness took hold over me again. I knew I was about to faint. I ran without thinking. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember how I got there. I lay down on the bed, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I was going to break my chest.
The next day, I decided to face the matter. I went to visit Mrs. Laura. I thought about telling her what I had seen, but when she greeted me at the door, horror washed over me again. At her side was the dog. The same dog that I had seen the previous 2 nights, but this time with its normal head. A normal dog's head. However, when the animal began to bark at me, I knew I wasn't crazy. It was the same sound, the same bark I had heard those nights. Only this time, the grotesque human face wasn't there. I tried to remain calm, but terror tightened my stomach. I asked her how long she had that dog. "They gave it to me after my husband died," she replied with a smile, "so I wouldn't feel alone." I said no more. There was no need. I said goodbye quickly, telling her I was sorry about Don Alejandro. But deep down, what was killing me was not the pain, but the fear. The fear that her husband was still somehow present in that dog.
The baby monitor. Last month, my wife and I had bought an old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, the kind of place people retire to when they want peace and quiet. It was charming, rustic wood floors, acres of land, and just enough creeks to remind us of its history. We needed a change of pace, something slower after the chaos of city life. Everything was so perfect, or so we thought. There was this one thing though, something we didn't expect. Every night, the baby monitor would crackle to life, filling the house with a low static hum. At first, we brushed it off. The house was old, maybe it was some interference, or the wiring acting up. We didn't even own a baby monitor when we moved in. It was left behind by the previous owners in the attic. We found it while cleaning and thought it was cute, a little piece of the house's history, so we plugged it in as a quirky reminder. The first few nights, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but around midnight, the monitor would come to life, buzzing ever so faintly. It was enough to freak us out. Old electronics can be unpredictable, especially out here in the countryside, but then the sound started.
It was subtle at first, a soft rustling, like fabric shifting or someone moving around quietly. We told ourselves it must be picking up some distant signal from a neighbor's house, though the closest one was miles away. It wasn't long before the rustling turned into something far more unnerving. Whispers. Faint, muffled whispers that seemed to be trying to communicate, but the words were too garbled to make out. I remember my wife joking one evening, "Maybe it's the ghost of the last kid who lived here." We laughed, but the laughter was forced. A week later, it escalated.
We were lying in bed, just drifting off, when the baby monitor crackled to life again. But this time, instead of its usual static, we heard it. A woman's voice. Soft, gentle, and unmistakably real. She was humming a lullaby, like she was trying to soothe the baby. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My wife sat up in bed, her face pale. She stared at me, waiting for an explanation that I didn't have. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. There was no denying it. Someone, or something, was using the monitor to speak. But it didn't make sense. The monitor was in the spare room. The one we hadn't gotten around to using yet. The one with the crib that we never put there. The humming continued. Then the voice came again. Clearer this time. It was close. It was like it was just on the other side of the wall. "Shh, don't cry. Mommy's here."
We didn't move. My heart raced as the whispers continued, more insistent. I felt like I was paralyzed, trapped in the bed as the voice persisted. "Mommy's here," it said again, soothing but wrong, like something pretending to be a mother. "What the hell?" I muttered, climbing out of bed. My wife grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "You're not going in there," she hissed. I ignored her and grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand. I had to see. I needed to know what was going on. With every step towards the spare room, my stomach twisted tighter. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, as though something was draining the warmth from the house. When I reached the door, I hesitated. The handle was ice cold under my palm. The baby monitor's static was louder now, almost like it was calling me in. I took a deep breath and swung the door open.
The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the monitor's light. The crib, which we had never put there, was sitting in the middle of the room, empty. My flashlight flickered, its beam weak, barely cutting through the darkness. Then I saw her. In the corner of the room, hunched over, was a figure. A woman, her back to me, cradling something in her arms. Her hair was long, stringy, matted. Falling all over her face as she rocked back and forth, she was humming the same lullaby, the one we had heard through the monitor. My legs refused to move. My brain screamed at me to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. Then, she stopped humming. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, gaunt, with eyes too big and too dark, sunken into hollow sockets. She didn't blink. She just stared at me with a look of pity? Her arms were still cradling the bundle in her lap, and in the dim light, I saw what it was.
There was no baby, just a rotted, decayed cloth doll. Its face cracked and broken, but she held it like it was real, like it was alive. "Shh," she whispered again, her voice softer now. "You'll wake him." I stumbled back, slamming the door shut behind me. My wife was already standing in the hallway, her eyes wide with terror. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "But we need to leave, now."
We packed whatever we could carry and left that night. We didn't stop until we reached a motel on the edge of town. I tried to explain what I saw, but no words made sense. Who was she, and why was she there? The next morning, we called the realtor and put the house up for sale. We haven't been back since.
But the baby monitor, it still haunts me. Sometimes in the dead of night, I swear I can still hear it crackling, faint whispers on the edge of my hearing saying, "Mommy's here."